The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its walls were made of crystal that had been grown over 10,000 years. Light from 3 artificial suns filled the space with a warm golden glow. 47 species had seats in this room. They had governed the known galaxy for longer than most could remember. Today, a new species stood before them. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was small by galactic standards. She stood at 5 feet and 8 inches tall. Her skin was brown, her hair was black, and her eyes were dark and calm. She wore a simple gray uniform with a blue planet patch on her shoulder. Behind her stood 2 aides who looked equally unremarkable. The humans had achieved faster than light travel only 200 years ago. This was nothing. The youngest species on the council, the Velith, had taken 4,000 years to reach the same point. The oldest, the silicon-based architects, had been sailing between stars for nearly 1,000,000 years. And yet here the humans were, asking for full membership. High Arbiter Zinthal watched from the central platform. His body was made of living crystal, and light moved through him like blood through veins. He had lived for 40,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had seen species destroy themselves and others reach for the stars. Very little surprised him anymore. But something about the humans made him feel strange. He had reviewed their historical files the night before. What he found there had kept him awake until morning. Ambassador Vasquez, spoke Counselor Drex of the Krithvar. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. He was 7 feet tall with gray skin covered in natural armor plates. His species had conquered 12 star systems through war. They respected only strength. Your species wishes to join our council, but we know almost nothing about you. Tell us about your military. Elena nodded. She had expected this question. The United Nations Space Command maintains a defensive fleet, she said. Her voice was calm and even. We have patrol ships to protect our trade routes. We have stations to monitor our borders. We have enough to keep our people safe. That is not what I asked, Drex said. He leaned forward, and his yellow eyes narrowed. I asked about your military doctrine, your philosophy of war. Every species has one. The Veleth believe in quick strikes. The Skarl believe in overwhelming numbers. We Krithvar believe that victory belongs to the strongest. What do humans believe? The chamber fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every form of attention turned to the small human woman. Elena took a slow breath. Humans fear war, she said simply. We avoid it whenever we can. We consider it a failure of diplomacy, of understanding, of wisdom. War is not something we seek. It is something we hope to never face. For a moment, no one moved. Then the laughter started. It began with the Krethvar delegation. Counselor Drex threw back his head and let out a booming laugh that echoed off the crystal walls. Soon the Skarl joined in. Then the Raxians. Then a dozen other species. Fear war, Drex said when he could speak again. You fear war? And you expect to survive in this galaxy? The galaxy is not as peaceful as the Council would like to believe, added Lord Vane of the Skarl Dominion. He was thin and pale, with 4 arms and eyes that reflected no light. There are species out there who will smell your weakness like blood in water. They will come for you, and when they do, your fear will not save you. Elena did not flinch. Her face remained calm. We did not say we cannot fight, she replied. We said we prefer not to. There is no difference, Drex snorted. A species that fears war is a species that has never truly faced it. You are children. Soft, weak children, who have been lucky enough to grow up in a quiet corner of the galaxy. Several other delegates nodded in agreement. The humans were clearly a prey species. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. They were small and fragile. Their fear of war only confirmed what everyone already suspected. They were weak. High Arbiter Zinthal remained silent through all of this. He watched Elena Vasquez carefully. He watched her aides. He looked for any sign of fear or shame in their faces. He found none. Instead, he saw something that troubled him. Something that looked almost like patience, like they were waiting for something, like they had heard all of this before and knew exactly how it would end. He thought again about the historical files, about what he had read there. The Council will vote, Zinthal announced, his voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. All in favor of granting humanity provisional membership in the Galactic Council. The vote was not close. Humanity was accepted, but only barely. and with conditions. You will be assigned to Sector 7, Drex announced with satisfaction. It is a quiet region far from any major trade routes or strategic resources. You will be safe there. He said, the word safe, like it was an insult. The Council will provide protection if any hostile species threatens you, since you clearly cannot protect yourselves. Elena simply nodded. We thank the Council for its generosity. As the session ended and delegates began to leave, Drex walked past the human delegation. He stopped and leaned down until his face was inches from Elena's. Enjoy your protected sector, little human, he growled. Stay there. Stay quiet. Stay afraid. Because if you ever step out of line, you will learn what real strength looks like. You will learn your place. Elena met his eyes without blinking. We know our place, Counselor, she said softly. We know exactly what we are. Something in her voice made Drex hesitate. Just for a moment. Then he snorted and walked away. High Arbiter Zinthal approached the humans as the chamber emptied. Ambassador Vasquez, he said. I have read your species' historical records. All of them. Elena's expression did not change. Have you? I have. They were educational. He paused. The Council believes you are weak because you fear war. But I have lived a long time. I have learned that fear comes in many forms. Some species fear war because they cannot win it. But others, he let the sentence hang in the air. Elena smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. But there was something in it that made the ancient arbiter feel very old and very young at the same time. It was a pleasure to meet you, High Arbiter, she said. I hope we can speak again soon. She turned and walked away, her aides following close behind. Zinthal watched her go. He thought about what he had read in those files. He thought about the names and dates and numbers. Verdun, Stalingrad, Hiroshima, Rwanda, names that meant nothing to the rest of the galaxy. Names that should have meant everything. The humans fear war, he thought to himself, but not for the reason everyone believes. He looked around the empty chamber. He thought about the Krithvar and their arrogance. He thought about the Raxians and their slave ships. He thought about all the species who had laughed at the small, soft humans. They have no idea, he realized. They have absolutely no idea what they are dealing with. Somewhere in the back of his ancient mind, a warning whispered, when the humans stop being afraid, the galaxy will learn to be. 3 years passed. Humanity settled into their protected sector like guests who knew they were not truly welcome. They built colonies on 17 worlds. They established trade routes with friendly species. They kept their heads down and their voices quiet. The galaxy mostly forgot about them. New Helsinki was humanity's third largest colony. It sat on the edge of human space, a green and blue world covered in forests and lakes. 2.3 million people lived there. They were farmers and teachers and engineers. They had built cities of glass and steel. They had planted gardens that bloomed in colors no earth flower had ever known. They thought they were safe. Governor Maria Santos stood in her office on the morning it all began. She was looking out the window at the capital city when her assistant ran in. Governor, the young man gasped. Ships. 40 ships just dropped out of faster than light. They're in orbit. Maria turned slowly. What kind of ships? The assistant's face was white. Raxian. The Raxian hegemony was one of the oldest powers in the galaxy. They had built their empire on a simple foundation: slavery. For thousands of years, they had raided weaker species and taken their people. Billions of beings lived and died in Raxian work camps and factories. The Galactic Concil tolerated them because they were rich and powerful and because their slave labor produced goods that everyone wanted to buy. No one talked about where those goods came from. The Raxians had never raided human space before. There had been no reason to. Humans were protected by the Council. Humans were weak and few and far away. Humans were not worth the trouble. But something had changed. High Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched New Helsinki turn slowly below him. He was tall for a Raxian, nearly 8 feet, with skin the color of dried blood and eyes like polished coal. He had led raids on 100 worlds. He had captured millions of slaves. He had never failed. Open a channel to the planet, he ordered. His communications officer obeyed. A moment later, Vex's image appeared on every screen on New Helsinki. Humans of this world, he said. His voice was calm and cold. I am High Commander Vex, of the Raxian hegemony. You have something we need. People, workers, 100,000 of your kind will come with us today. They will serve the hegemony. They will be useful. He paused and let his words sink in. You have 1 hour to begin transporting volunteers to our ships. If you do not, we will begin selecting people ourselves. We will not be gentle. We will not be kind. You have been warned. The transmission ended. On New Helsinki, people ran through the streets. Parents grabbed their children. Old people prayed. Young people raged. But no one knew what to do. They had no military. They had no weapons. They were farmers and teachers and engineers. Governor Santos sent an emergency message to Earth. 12 light-years away, Admiral James Okonkwo received the message on the bridge of the UNSC Defiant. He was 63 years old, with dark skin and gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. He had spent his whole career hoping this day would never come. Now it was here. Send a message to the Raxian fleet, he ordered. Standard diplomatic channel. The message was simple and polite. It identified the human ships in the area. It noted that New Helsinki was a protected colony under Galactic Concil law. It requested that the Raxian fleet withdraw immediately. It offered to open negotiations to resolve any misunderstandings. It was exactly what the Raxians expected. High Commander Vex read the message and laughed. The humans want to negotiate, he told his officers. They want us to leave peacefully. They are afraid. He turned to his weapons officer. Begin bombardment of agricultural sectors. Show them what happens when prey species refuse their betters. Green fire rained down from the sky. Farms burned. Forests exploded. Thousands of people died in the first 10 minutes. In the Galactic Council chamber, delegates watched the events unfold on massive screens. Most showed little emotion. Raids like this happened all the time. The strong took from the weak. That was the way of the galaxy. Councillor Drex of the Krethvar leaned back in his seat and smiled. I told them. He said to no one in particular. I told them they would learn their place. Other delegates nodded. Some placed bets on how long it would take the humans to surrender. The smart money said less than a day. High Arbiter Zinthal said nothing. He watched the screens with ancient eyes and waited. Back in human space, Admiral Okonkwo received reports of the bombardment. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, something had changed in his face. Send another message to the Raxian fleet, he said quietly. Final warning. High Commander Vex received the message on his bridge. He read it out loud so his officers could share the joke. This is Admiral James Okonkwo of the United Nations Space Command. You have attacked a human colony. You have killed human citizens. This is your final opportunity to withdraw. If you do not leave human space within the next 30 minutes, we will respond with force. You were warned. May God have mercy on you, because we cannot. The bridge erupted in laughter. May God have mercy, Vex repeated, shaking his head. These creatures are even more pathetic than I thought. They pray to gods while their people burn. What kind of species begs for mercy while issuing threats? Should we respond, Commander? His communications officer asked. No, Vex said. Continue the bombardment. When their hour is up, begin ground operations. I want 100,000 humans in our cargo holds by nightfall. He settled back in his command chair, content in the knowledge that this would be the easiest raid of his career. He did not notice the sensor readings that had just appeared on his tactical officer's screen. He did not see the small dots emerging from behind New Helsinki's moon. He did not hear the warning that his tactical officer tried to give before the first shot was fired. Across human space, in hidden shipyards buried beneath asteroid fields, automated systems received a signal they had waited decades to receive. In orbital platforms disguised as communication satellites, weapons systems powered up for the first time. In secret bunkers on 100 worlds, men and women in uniforms read orders they had hoped would never come. And somewhere deep in the heart of human civilization, a machine older than the space program itself began to wake. It was called the War Network. It had been built after the last great war on Earth, when humanity swore they would never again be caught unprepared. It had waited in silence for over 300 years. Now it had a purpose. Admiral Okonkwo stood on his bridge and watched the tactical display light up with new contacts. Ships were appearing everywhere. Ships that weren't supposed to exist. Ships that no database in the galaxy had ever recorded. He took a deep breath. All ships, he said into the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Okonkwo. Execute War Plan Alpha. Weapons free. God help us all. The 30 minutes ended. and humanity stopped pretending. 7 minutes. That was how long it took. High Commander Vex did not understand what was happening. One moment, his 40 ships controlled the skies above New Helsinki. The next moment, the universe itself seemed to tear apart. The first shot came from nowhere. A slug of solid tungsten, no bigger than a human fist, traveling at 3% of the speed of light. It hit Vex's flagship in the engineering section. The shields did nothing. The armor did nothing. The slug passed through the ship like a needle through water, leaving a hole the size of a small house. Then came more shots. Thousands of them. Millions. Vex watched his tactical display turn red. Ship after ship vanished, not disabled, not damaged, destroyed. Completely and utterly destroyed. Where? He screamed. Where are they firing from? His tactical officer was dead. Half the bridge was dead. Smoke and fire filled the air. Through the chaos, Vex saw something on the main screen that made his blood turn cold. Ships were emerging from behind the moon. Human ships. Hundreds of them. They were sleek and dark and covered in weapons that Vex had never seen before. They moved with a speed and precision that should have been impossible. And they were still coming. More ships appeared from the asteroid field. More from the planet's shadow. More dropping out of faster-than-light space in perfect formation. 3,000 human warships now filled the space around New Helsinki. The smallest of them was twice the size of Vex's flagship. On the bridge of the UNSC Retribution, Captain Sarah Chen watched the Raxian fleet die. Her face showed no emotion. Her hands did not shake. She had trained for this moment her entire life. Target the flagship, she ordered. Disable only. The Admiral wants survivors. Her weapons officer nodded. A precisely calculated shot took out the Raxian flagship's engines without destroying the ship. 7 minutes after the first shot was fired, the battle was over. 39 Raxian ships had been reduced to floating debris. The flagship drifted in space, dark and powerless. High Commander Vex was pulled from the wreckage by human marines in powered armor that made him look like a child. He was the only survivor. In the Galactic Council chamber, no one spoke. The delegates had watched the entire battle on their screens. They had seen weapons they did not recognize tear through Raxian shields like they were made of paper. They had seen human ships move with coordination that seemed almost supernatural. They had seen a fleet of 3,000 warships appear from nothing. Ships that did not exist in any database. Ships that no spy had ever reported. Ships that should have been impossible to hide. Counselor Drex of the Krethvar stood frozen at his seat. His mouth hung open. His yellow eyes were wide with something he had never felt before. Fear. That is not possible, Lord Veen of the Skarl whispered. We have monitored their space for years. They had nothing. A few patrol ships. Some defensive platforms. Nothing like that. They hid them, said Ambassador Urel of the Velith. Her voice was barely audible. They hid an entire war fleet. For decades, maybe longer. But how? Veen demanded. How do you hide 3,000 ships? No one had an answer. High Arbiter Zinthal finally moved. He rose from his seat and walked slowly to the center of the chamber. Light moved through his crystal body like thoughts through a mind. I told you, he said quietly. I told you I had read their historical files. What does that matter? Drex snarled. He was angry now. Angry because he was afraid and did not want to admit it. What does their history have to do with this? Zinthal turned to face him. Everything, he said. Their history has everything to do with this. He waved a hand, and new images appeared on the screens. Old images. Images from Earth, trenches filled with mud and blood. Cities reduced to ash and rubble. Mushroom clouds rising over ruined landscapes. Mass graves, burning villages, children with empty eyes. This is what humans did to each other, Zinthal said. Not to aliens, not to enemies from other worlds. To themselves, their own kind. For thousands of years, the images continued. Wars with names the delegates did not recognize. Verdun, Somme, Stalingrad, Normandy, Hiroshima, Vietnam, Rwanda. They developed weapons of mass destruction before they had computers, Zinthal continued. They created bombs that could destroy entire cities before they created medicine that could cure simple diseases. They built machines designed only to kill in numbers we cannot imagine. He paused and let the silence fill the chamber. And then they stopped. Stopped? Veen asked. They looked at what they had become. They looked at the ashes of their cities and the graves of their children. And they chose to be different. They created laws against war. They built institutions for peace. They taught their children that violence was wrong. Zinthal turned back to the screens, which now showed the human fleet in orbit around New Helsinki. But they never forgot. They never stopped preparing. They hid their weapons and their ships and their soldiers. They hoped they would never need them. They feared the day they would have to use them again. Why? Drex demanded. If they are so powerful, why hide it? Why pretend to be weak? Because they were not pretending, Zinthal said. When Ambassador Vasquez told us that humans fear war, she was telling the truth. They do fear war. But not because they cannot win. He looked directly at Drex. They fear war because they know they will win. They fear what they become when they stop holding back. They fear the thing inside them that makes them so very, very good at killing. The chamber fell silent again. Then a new transmission appeared on the screens. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, speaking from Earth. Members of the Galactic Council, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was something heavy in it, something sad. By now you have seen what happened at New Helsinki. I want to explain. She paused. We did not lie to you. We told you we fear war. This is true. Every human child learns about our wars. We learn the names of the battles and the numbers of the dead. We learn what our ancestors did to each other and why it was wrong. She looked directly into the camera. When we came to the stars, we hoped things would be different. We hoped we could leave that part of ourselves behind. We built new worlds. We made new friends. We tried to be the species we wanted to be, not the species we had been. Her expression hardened. But we are not fools. We know that the galaxy is dangerous. We know that there are those who see kindness as weakness. So we prepared. We built ships and weapons and trained soldiers. We hid them because we did not want to use them. We hoped we would never have to. She was quiet for a moment. The Raxians gave us no choice. They attacked our people. They killed our citizens. They forced us to become what we fear most. The screens showed the wreckage of the Raxian fleet. The single survivor being led away in chains. We did not want this, Elena said. We do not want war. But if war comes to us, we will finish it. That is not a threat. It is a promise and a warning. She straightened her shoulders. The Raxian hegemony has attacked humanity. We will respond. Any species that stands with them will be treated as an enemy. Any species that remains neutral will be left alone. This is not our choice, but it is our reality. The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one in the council chamber moved. Then Councillor Drex spoke, his voice rough and strange. They were never prey, he said. They were never weak. He looked at the images still displayed on the screens. Images of human history. Images of human violence. Images of a species that had spent 5,000 years learning to kill. They are the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, he said quietly. And they have been hiding among us the whole time. 3 days later, the Raxian hegemony declared total war on humanity. 17 species joined them. They believed their numbers would be enough. They were wrong. The war lasted 6 months. It should have lasted years. The coalition against humanity included 18 species with a combined fleet of nearly 50,000 ships. They controlled hundreds of worlds and commanded trillions of soldiers. On paper, they outnumbered humanity 10 to 1. Numbers did not matter. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not meet enemy fleets in honorable battle. They did not follow the traditions of galactic warfare that had existed for millions of years. They fought like something else entirely. They fought like humans. Grand Admiral Uran of the Skarl Dominion learned this lesson at the Battle of Nexus Gate. He had gathered a fleet of 8,000 ships to crush the human forces defending a vital trade route. His plan was simple: overwhelm them with numbers. Crush them with firepower. Victory was certain. The humans sent only 200 ships. Uran laughed when he saw the enemy formation. He ordered his fleet forward in a massive wave, expecting to sweep the humans aside like dust before a storm. The human ships did not engage directly. Instead, they scattered. They ran. They hid in the asteroid fields and behind the gas giants. Uran thought they were cowards. Then the attacks began. Human ships appeared from nowhere, fired devastating volleys, and vanished before the Skarl could respond. They targeted supply ships, command vessels, communication relays. They never stayed to fight. They just struck and disappeared. Uran tried to chase them. His fleet spread out, hunting for the enemy. That was exactly what the humans wanted. Separated and confused, the Skarl ships fell one by one. Small human attack groups would surround isolated vessels and destroy them in seconds. By the time Yuran realized his mistake, he had lost 3,000 ships. He ordered a retreat. The humans let him go, but they had planted tracking devices on his surviving ships. 3 days later, when the Skarl fleet stopped to repair at a hidden base, the humans arrived in force. 800 ships against 5,000. The battle lasted 40 minutes. Yuran died when his flagship exploded. Only 300 Skarl ships escaped. The humans called this kind of warfare many things: guerrilla tactics, asymmetric combat, shock and awe. The Galactic Council called it something else: terror. War Master Kreth of the Krethvar refused to accept defeat in space. His species were warriors. They had conquered 12 systems through ground combat. If the humans wanted to hide behind their ships and their tricks, fine. Kreth would meet them on the surface of their worlds. He landed 100,000 Krethvar soldiers on the human colony of New Eden. The invasion began at dawn. Krethvar warriors, each one 7 feet tall and covered in natural armor, marched across the plains toward the human cities. They expected easy victory. Humans were small and soft. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. This would be a slaughter. They were right. It was a slaughter, but not the kind Kreth expected. The humans did not meet them in open battle. Instead, they hid. They dug trenches and built bunkers. They planted explosives and set traps. They waited in buildings and trees and holes in the ground. And then they started killing. Human soldiers fought like nothing Kreth had ever seen. They used weapons that could punch through Krethvar armor like it was paper. They used explosives that could level entire city blocks. They used tactics that seemed almost insane, attacking from impossible angles, retreating when they should advance, advancing when they should retreat. But worst of all was their endurance. Krethvar warriors were strong. They could fight for hours without rest, but humans could fight for days. They did not need much sleep. They did not need much food. They just kept coming, hour after hour, day after day, wearing down their enemies through sheer stubbornness. Kreth lost 30,000 soldiers in the first week. He called for reinforcements. More troops landed. More troops died. The humans seemed to know every move before he made it. Their communications were unbreakable. Their coordination was perfect. They fought like a single mind spread across thousands of bodies. On the 15th day, Kreth learned about something called video games. A captured human soldier explained it during interrogation. Human children, he said, grew up playing simulated wars. They spent hours every day practicing tactics and strategy. They fought virtual battles against friends and strangers across their entire world. By the time they were adults, they had more combat experience than most professional soldiers. Kreth did not believe it. It sounded like a joke. Then he watched recordings of human children playing something called a first-person shooter. He watched them communicate, coordinate, and execute complex maneuvers with casual ease. He watched them lose and start over and lose again until they won. He finally understood why his soldiers were dying. Humans had been training for war their entire lives, not because they wanted to, but because war was part of who they were. It was in their games, their stories, their history. They could not escape it even when they tried. On the 20th day, Kreth surrendered. The human commander who accepted his surrender was a woman named Colonel Jessica Park. She was 5 feet tall and weighed maybe 120 pounds. Kreth could have broken her in half with one hand. He did not try. Across the galaxy, the coalition was collapsing. The Raxian hegemony had expected a quick victory. Instead, their slave worlds were burning. Human ships appeared at their most heavily defended colonies and simply ignored the defenses. Weapons that should have taken years to develop seemed to appear overnight. The humans adapted to every tactic, countered every strategy, and never stopped advancing. But what truly broke the coalition was something else. The humans freed the slaves. 3 billion beings from dozens of species had lived and died in Raxian work camps for thousands of years. The galaxy had ignored them. The Council had looked away. No one had cared. The humans cared. Every world they captured, they liberated. Every slave they found, they freed. They set up camps and hospitals and schools. They fed the hungry and healed the sick and told them they were people, not property. Word spread. The slaves began to fight back. Rebellions broke out across Raxian space. Species that had been enemies for generations united against their masters. The Raxian hegemony did not fall to human weapons. It fell to hope. Admiral James Okonkwo sat alone in his quarters on the night the war ended. His desk was covered in reports, casualty lists, damage assessments, names of ships lost and soldiers killed. He had won. Humanity had won. The coalition had surrendered. The Raxian leadership was in chains. The galaxy was at peace. He should have felt proud. Instead, he felt tired. Tired and old and sad. He picked up a pen and began to write in his journal. Today, the war ended. 6 months. 187 days. And in that time, I have ordered the deaths of more beings than my grandfather's generation lost in their great war. We won. We always win. That is the curse of being human. I think about Ambassador Vasquez and what she told the Council 3 years ago. We fear war. We avoid it whenever we can. We consider it a failure. She was right. This was a failure. Our failure. We failed to convince them that we meant peace. We failed to show them that we were different. We failed to be the species we wanted to be. And so we became the species we feared. He paused and looked at the reports on his desk. So many dead. So many gone. I will carry this for the rest of my life. Every name, every number, every ship that burned and every soldier that fell. This is why we fear war. Not because we might lose, because of what we lose when we win. He closed the journal and sat in the darkness. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere out there, freed slaves were building new lives. Conquered worlds were healing. The galaxy was moving forward, and humanity was trying, once again, to forget what it was capable of. 1 year after the war, the Galactic Council chamber was full for the first time since the conflict began. Every species had sent their representatives, even the defeated ones, even the ones who had tried to destroy humanity. They had come to witness something historic. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked to the center of the chamber. She wore the same simple gray uniform she had worn 4 years ago, when she first stood before the council and told them that humans fear war. The same blue planet patch sat on her shoulder, but everything else had changed. The delegates who had laughed at her were silent now. The species who had mocked humanity watched with careful eyes. The Krithvar delegation sat in their seats and did not move. The surviving Raxians kept their heads down and their voices quiet. High Arbiter Zinthal rose from his seat. The council has called this session to vote on full membership for humanity, he announced. His voice echoed through the crystal halls. All in favor? Every delegate raised their hand. Every single one. The vote was unanimous. There was no celebration. No cheering. Just a quiet acknowledgement that something fundamental had shifted. Ambassador Vasquez, Zinthal said, would you like to address the council? Elena nodded. She looked around the chamber at the faces of 100 different species. Some she had never met. Some had tried to kill her people. Some had lost everything in the war. She took a deep breath. 4 years ago, I stood in this chamber and told you that humans fear war, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. You laughed. You thought we were weak. You thought our fear was cowardice. She paused. I want to explain why you were wrong. She raised her hand, and images appeared on the screens around the chamber. The images that Zinthal had shown them during the war. The trenches, the bombs, the burning cities, the mass graves. This is our history, Elena said. This is what we did to ourselves. For thousands of years, humans killed each other in numbers that would horrify anyone in this chamber. We fought over land, over religion, over ideas, over nothing at all. The images changed. Soldiers standing in mud, children lying in rubble, mushroom clouds rising over shattered landscapes. We developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We built machines whose only purpose was to kill as many people as possible. We created poisons that could wipe out entire populations, and we used them. We used all of them. The chamber was completely silent. Then we stopped, Elena continued. Not because someone made us, not because we ran out of enemies. We stopped because we looked at what we had become, and we were horrified. She let the words hang in the air. We taught our children about these wars. We showed them the pictures and told them the stories. We built monuments to the dead and wrote books about the living. We made sure that every human who ever lived would know what we were capable of. The images faded. That is why we fear war. Not because we cannot fight. Not because we cannot win. We fear war because we know exactly what we become when we embrace it. We have seen the monster inside us. We have looked into its eyes. She stood straighter. When we came to the stars, we hoped things would be different. We hoped we could leave the monster behind. We hoped that space would be big enough for everyone, and that we could finally be the peaceful species we wanted to be. Her voice hardened. But the galaxy taught us a different lesson. It taught us that kindness is seen as weakness, that peace is seen as surrender, that those who reach out their hands in friendship will have those hands cut off. She looked directly at the Krethvar delegation. You forced us to become what we feared. You attacked our people. You killed our children. You made us remember who we really are. Counselor Drex flinched. He did not meet her eyes. And now you have seen what happens when humans stop being afraid, Elena said. You have seen how quickly we adapt, how efficiently we kill, how completely we destroy those who threaten us. You have seen the thing we have spent generations trying to bury. She was quiet for a moment. We did not want this. We do not want to be this. But we are what we are. We cannot change our nature any more than you can change yours. All we can do is choose, every single day, not to let the monster out. She looked around the chamber. That is what I want you to understand. When we say, we fear war, we are not lying. We are not pretending. We are telling you the most important truth about our species. We are dangerous. We are deadly. We are the most efficient killers the galaxy has ever produced. Her voice dropped. And we are trying so very hard to be something better. The silence stretched on. Then High Arbiter Zinthal spoke. His voice was gentle, almost sad. I have lived for 40,000 years, he said. I have seen predator species and prey species. I have seen conquerors and conquered. I have watched empires rise and fall. He looked at Elena. But I have never seen anything like humans. You are a predator species that chose to become peaceful. Not because you were forced to. Not because you lost. But because you understood the cost of what you were. He paused. That is not weakness. That is the greatest strength I have ever witnessed. The chamber stirred. Delegates looked at each other. Something was shifting in the way they saw the small, soft creatures who had just defeated half the galaxy. The Council has created a new position, Zinthal announced. Peacekeepers of last resort. Humanity will serve in this role. You will be called only when all other options have failed. Only when every peaceful solution has been tried and rejected. Elena nodded slowly. We accept. I hope we never have to call on you, Zinthal said quietly. So do we, Elena replied. So do we. After the session ended, the delegates scattered. Most left quickly, eager to return home and process what they had seen and heard. But one figure remained. Counselor Drex of the Krethvar walked slowly toward Elena. His gray skin seemed paler than before. His yellow eyes were tired. Ambassador, he said. His voice was rough. May I speak with you? Elena nodded. They walked together to a quiet corner of the chamber. For a long moment, Drex said nothing. He just stood there, looking at the crystal walls, thinking about things he had never thought about before. My species conquered 12 star systems, he finally said. We killed millions. We enslaved thousands. We believed that strength was all that mattered, that the strong had the right to take from the weak. He looked at her. I saw your ships destroy our fleet in minutes. I saw your soldiers defeat our warriors on the ground. I saw your people free the slaves we had kept for generations. He shook his head. You are stronger than us. You have always been stronger than us. But you pretended to be weak. We were not pretending, Elena said. I know that now. Drex was quiet for a moment. How do you do it? How do you live with it? The capability for such violence. The knowledge of what you could do if you chose. Elena thought about the question. It was the question at the heart of everything. The question that every human asked themselves at some point in their lives. Every day. We choose not to, she said simply. That is all. That is everything. Every single day, we look at the monster inside us and we say no. Not today. Today, we will be better. Drex stared at her. Is it really that simple? Simple does not mean easy, Elena replied. It is the hardest thing we do. But it is what being human means. We know what we are. We accept what we are. And then we choose to be something different. Drex was silent for a long time. Perhaps, he said finally, My species has something to learn from yours." He turned and walked away. Elena watched him go. She thought about the war, the dead, the destruction, the cost of being human in a galaxy that did not understand. 6 months later, she returned to Earth. She spent her remaining years teaching young diplomats and writing about her experiences. She died peacefully at 93, surrounded by her family. But the galaxy never forgot what she had taught them. In the centuries that followed, humanity stood as guardians of the peace. They were rarely called upon. Most species remembered what happened when humans were pushed too far. They remembered the fire and the fury and the unstoppable advance. But they also remembered something else. They remembered that the most dangerous predators in the galaxy had chosen to be protectors. They remembered that the species most capable of destruction had dedicated themselves to peace. They remembered that strength was not about what you could do, but about what you chose not to do. On the border of the former Raxian space, a human ship patrolled slowly through the stars. Inside, Marines stood watch over trade routes that had once carried slaves. A small transport ship passed nearby. Through the window, a child from a species that had once been property looked out and saw the human vessel. She waved. A Marine saw her. She smiled and waved back. Then she returned to her post. Protector, liberator, monster by nature, guardian by choice. The galaxy had misunderstood humanity's fear. It was never cowardice. It was never weakness. It was the hardest kind of courage, the courage to know exactly what you are and to choose, every single day, to be something better.